this is one of my favorite parts of what we do every quarter in terms of analysis, which is what we call the best versus the rest. So we take a look at all the restaurants that we have financial data for, and we're looking at individual restaurant locations, not brands, but locations, and say, what do the top 25% of them based on traffic growth, those that are outperforming on traffic, that top 25%, the best in class, what are they doing differently? So what we do is listen to the guest, let the guest guide that conversation with what they're saying through their online reviews, that unprompted, unaided. This is what matters to them. This is what drove the needle. So we take all those reviews, primarily Google, that's where the bulk of it is, but there's also Yelp, TripAdvisor, run it through our AI. It knows like when there's a huge big paragraph of a review, it knows like, okay, here the guest was talking about food, here they're talking about cleanliness, they're talking about speed of service, that falls into service, etc. So I'll dissect it, and then it will know it's a positive, a neutral, or a negative mention, right? What was the sentiment around that? So what I'm going to show you here is what we call net sentiment scores, which is the percentage of positive minus the percentage of negative in each of these categories. So again, best in class on traffic, sentiment compared to the rest. And what we saw in full service, and this is for Q4, is that the food was not perceived as being different. Sentiment was equally, exactly the same in those two groups. Service was actually a little lower in those best performing restaurants, which you might be thinking, well, that's counterintuitive. But when you look at value, it really makes sense. The one driver that saw the bigger difference, the bigger lift between those two, is that value sentiment. It's almost like the guest is saying, yes, I'm tolerating a little bit of a slower service, so it was not as attentive as I'd like to, but the value was there, and I feel like my money was worth what I paid for. So that is on the full service side, same analysis, but now looking at limited service, same pattern, a little bit more of a lift in food. Food did drive a bigger difference between those two. Service, same, a little bit more negative in the top, but then look at value, a huge difference between those two. Actually, value sentiment is positive at the top and very negative for the rest of those restaurant locations. It's all about it being worth it. Now, this is a dynamic metric and a dynamic dimension of the restaurant experience. It's not like we can say, yeah, it's value forever, just focus on value. When you look at the same analysis last year, it was food really that was driving top performing restaurants. If you go back to COVID, it was cleanliness, of course, right? That made sense. Pre-COVID, we had some periods in which ambiance was king. There was times when service was the key driver. The guest is telling us through those online reviews what matters to them and what's going to drive their behaviors in 2024 and likely into 25. Value is what they're saying is what will make them decide where to go